All right. How do you get happier? So, most people would obviously say that that's the number one concern of their life. They want to get happier. They want to be happy and have a fulfilling life in their careers and their finance and their relationships and all that. But when you ask people, how many books have you actually read on happiness, or how much time have you actually spent studying what is happiness? Like, how does it work? How does the brain work? And how can you actually get happier? Most people haven't spent very much time at all looking into that. So that's why I wanted to talk today about just a really good book that I love. It's called The Happiness Hypothesis by Jonathan Haidt. And basically, Jonathan Haidt's a professor at a business school. And in this book, he talks about happiness from a scientific point of view. So what is happiness in terms of like the brain, like what's the brain actually doing and why is it doing what it's doing, and how can you optimize your life for happiness in like your work, your relationships, your finances, all that. And that's kind of why I like it, because it's not just someone who's just lived their life and sort of has an opinion on happiness and how it works and trying to pass that on. It's actually someone who's done hard science and studied how the brain actually works and is basically presenting that data. And I just really love this book, and there's literally like a million things I could talk about it and I could go on for hours, but I just wanted to give you an idea of a few key points from the book, to just give you an overall picture of what it's all about. And there's one of the principles he talks about is what's called the Adaptation Principle. So what that is basically humans are very adaptive to things, and that can go both in the positive and negative. So he gives an example in the book of there's two people, and one of them, they're both basically the same level of happiness, just ticking along in life, and one of them wins the lottery, and then at the same time the other one breaks their neck and becomes a paraplegic. And he basically asks the question, out of those two, who do you think would be happier? And the obvious answer is the guy who won the lottery. But the funny thing is, he says that after about a year, both those people will have returned to effectively the same level of happiness. And the reason why is because of this adaptation principle. So the lottery winner gets an immediate spike in happiness because suddenly they can go on all these expensive trips and buy a nice car and go to all these expensive meals and life's great, but it becomes their new baseline. So suddenly they become used to getting all this expensive stuff and going away on trips and so they get that initial spike of happiness, but then it actually slowly declines as they actually adapt to it. And conversely, with the paraplegic, they get an initial drop off of happiness because suddenly they can't walk and they lose all their mobility. But then again, the mind just adapts to it, the brain adapts to it, so the happiness level just gradually rises again until the two people basically converge after about a year to similar sorts of happiness levels. And it kind of leads into another principle he talks about called the hedonic treadmill. So obviously if you take a treadmill in a gym, you can walk on it at 1 kilometer an hour, or you can sprint as hard as you want. But at the end of the day, you don't actually go anywhere. You're in the same spot. And he says that's how a lot of people live their lives. So a lot of people, they're always striving just for that next thing. So they tell themselves, I'll be happy if I just get that next promotion at work, or I'll be happy if I just get that nicer house, or I'll be happier if I just earn another $10,000 a year. And it's always just that next thing, because going back to that adaptation principle, as soon as you achieve something, that just becomes your new baseline, and it's always about the next thing. So it's a hedonic treadmill. It's just like running on a hamster wheel. You never quite catch that happiness that you're chasing. And a lot of people live their lives that way. So also just wanted to give just three quick examples of areas that he says you can improve your happiness levels in if you follow a few principles. So the first one is in your finances. So a lot of people obviously say money can't buy happiness, but But he says in the book that anyone who says that just doesn't know where to shop. So there's things you can spend your money on which increase your happiness, and things you can spend your money on that decrease your happiness. And things that decrease your happiness would be luxury goods like cars and houses and furniture and all that. But there's things you can spend your money on that actually increase your happiness, which things would be like taking your friend out to a meal, for example. So rather than spending, say, $70 on a new shirt for yourself, if you spend that $70 on taking a friend out to dinner, that's actually going to make you happier long term, because you're nurturing your relationship and you're looking after a friend, and it's just more long term beneficial. And other things like, rather than just buying stuff, just investing long term, so that you can have like financial independence and security, which brings other things like freedom, security, all that. So that's a much better use of money than sort of just buying a new car or whatever. He also talks about like with the career. So a lot of people, they'll get a job that they don't particularly love, but they don't particularly hate it either. And they sort of just work there, and the goal is you work there for 30, 40 years or whatever, and then you can retire, and then you'll be happy. And you can like enjoy relaxing by the beach or whatever. But he says there's a thing called the progress principle. So happiness doesn't come from actually attaining a goal. So whether that's like buying something that you want to buy or reaching that retirement goal, that's not what actually makes you happy. The progress and the journey of actually getting there is what makes you happy. So if like you're working in a job, it has to be something that you actually find fulfilling and actually enjoy progressing in and getting better at, and sort of mastering the craft, because that's what actually makes you happy. It's not the end goal of the retirement that's going to make you happy. It's that just progress day by day, year by year. And the other area he talks about is relationships. So he talks about two types of love. So there's like passionate love and compassionate love. And passionate love is sort of like when you've got great chemistry with someone and it's like very intense, and yeah, like very intense. But what he says is that passionate love fades very quickly. So you get a high spike of passion at the start, but then it drops off very quickly. Whereas compassionate love starts off basically with very little. So it's someone who's like more suited to like a long-term relationship, and you might not have like that passionate love initially, but that sort of love will actually increase your happiness levels long term, because that actually grows over time, whereas like passionate love spikes at the start and then just fades to nothing. And says that's why it's like people who have affairs and stuff obviously become miserable because of that, because they're neglecting and sort of destroying that compassionate love with like their long-term spouse for the short-term pleasure of the passionate love. But then once that fades away, they've got nothing, because they've lost their long-term partner and also the passionate love. So focusing on like that long-term compassionate love he says, is the key to happiness long-term in relationships. So yeah, there's like a ton more stuff in this book that I could talk about, as I said, for hours. But the reason I like it is because you can read it basically like a how-to manual of how to optimize your life for happiness. And as I said, like a lot of people say they want to be happy, but have never actually like studied happiness and how to achieve it. So yeah, highly recommend this book. And if you end up reading it because of this, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think of it. And yeah, if you like these sort of videos, just let me know as well, and feel free to subscribe, because I want to do a few more of them. So yeah, I hope that helps and you found that interesting, and we'll talk soon.